Talk now to somebody who's on that committee. That's somebody who can give us some insight here into Jay Johnson's testimony. Mike Quigley is a congressman from Illinois, member of the House Intelligence Committee, and joins us now from Capitol Hill as well. I'm sure you caught a little bit there of what Billy House was saying. Glad to speak with you here before you have to rush off to a vote, Congressman. Let me ask you about your frustration with the pace of this process. How do you and other Democrats plan or want to try to accelerate that?
Well, I mean, a lot of it's out of our control. All we can do is try to use public pressure to keep the investigation going forward. I do think we're back on track. I want to give kudos to Mr. Conaway. I think he and Mr. Schiff are working well. Today's hearing's one indication of that. Do we have a lot to do? Absolutely. Are we behind now? Absolutely. But the investigation is far too important for us to give up because others don't want it to go forward.
How much bipartisan unanimity is there on the direction of this committee's investigation? Do Republicans and Democrats agree on, at the very least, what they hope to investigate here?
Well, there were 4 elements that were on in writing by the full committee, and the hearing that you heard today was just one of those elements, hacking into the election process that Secretary Johnson talked about today. So it is not just about whether there was collusion between Russians and the Trump team. It's how far did the Russians go? How do we stop that in the future? And the issue of leaks. I would argue it just has to be the case de facto that we're also investigating obstruction because it's all part of the same process and a continuity of these actions.
Congressman Quigley, something that stood out to me from Jay Johnson's testimony today was how readily law enforcement agencies realized that there was Russian meddling on a state-by-state basis. And Bloomberg News wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago about the wideness of that, how many states were affected by this. I was struck by what he said about how big a role sovereignty played here, that states refused the help of the federal government. Going forward, how do you prevent that from happening? In other words, you're trying to curb cyber attacks. How do you get states to take the help of the federal government?
Yeah, I think you go through the public and you recognize, what do you have a greater fear of? The federal government giving you grants to buy new election equipment or education, or give you the heads up and training to avoid hacking in the future? Are you worried about that, or are you more worried about Russians attempting to influence the democratic process? So I think in the final analysis, the public gets it. You know, we're going to go through our turmoil in elections. We can't let the Russians influence it. I also think it would help a great deal if the President of the United States acknowledged what 17 intel agencies have already agreed has happened, that the Russians were the ones involved in this. They did the hacking and dumping, and they hacked into, what, double figures of states' election sites.
I asked Billy House a moment ago about the confidence that members of the committee have in the chairman, in Congressman Devin Nunes. Does he have your confidence? Would you like to see him step aside or recuse himself formally from him as chairman of this committee?
Well, obviously, I think we all thought he did. I mean, Mr. Conaway's been doing something in this meantime, and I think he's been doing it very well. You can't be sort of in and sort of out, and you can't step aside for a while. There needs to be continuity and trust in the investigation. Again, it's a 4-pronged investigation, maybe 5. It's the most important investigation, I would argue, in my lifetime. The public has to have faith and trust in this on both sides.
All right, Congressman from the 5th District in Illinois, that's Congressman Mike Quigley, Democrat representative from Illinois, joining us here, a member of the House Intelligence Committee.